Welcome to this week's second knowledge clip. In the previous knowledge clip, we focused on communication materials. Now we move on to the next stage in your project, in which you are finalizing your data collection plan. Let's talk about your data collection strategy and how you can communicate with your research team about it. So during the next 10 minutes, I'll discuss why it is important to develop a basic yet flexible data collection strategy. Then, the importance of registration and evaluation of your data collection activities and efforts. And finally, I'll discuss some potential risks. In other words, my previous mistakes and how to turn those into opportunities for your project. You probably already have a rough idea of the time frame for your data collection project and what your recruitment process will look like. Some could start at any given time, whereas others depend on clinical waiting list or applications, school holidays or transitions, or maybe consent from collaborators, such as schools or youth care facilities. In all cases, a concrete and well thought out plan is advisable. So when developing this basic strategy, make sure to include the following three things. First, determine your target sample. So this means the minimum and maybe even maximum number of participants, but also the distribution of certain characteristics that you prefer, such as gender, age, socioeconomic status, or maybe place of residence. Second, list potential recruitment activities or opportunities, including their potential success rate. My best advice would be to try to obtain as much information as possible from other researchers or stakeholders in advance. So, for example, if you work with youth care organizations, ask them about their expectations regarding their clients' willingness to participate. Do you want to recruit participants through schools? Ask other researchers about their experience. So, which approach worked or did not work for them, and what was their average response rate? Do you want to recruit using media or online platforms? Find out how many people follow these platforms and how often articles or posts are usually clicked on, read, or viewed. Also, talk to as many people as possible about your research project, even friends or family members. Who knows what kind of creative ideas or useful connections they could provide you with? You'll be surprised. Once you have this list of activities, it's time to set up a timeline. Start with activities that are expected to have the highest success rate. And also consider how many activities you can handle at the same time, or maybe whether you need to have help with this, or maybe from a student assistant. So when it comes to recruiting participants, more is usually more. So if you have more people on your team, you can create more momentum. Sometimes recruitment activities don't work out as well as expected beforehand. This doesn't automatically mean that it wasn't a good idea. Sometimes it just depends on timing, visibility, or other things that are outside of your control. So make sure to include certain activities at different time points in your recruitment strategy. So when developing this basic strategy, it is okay to be optimistic and to picture an ideal situation in which all your efforts will be rewarded. However, do not forget to also be realistic, or maybe even slightly pessimistic. So based on our own experiences, there are some considerations you could probably and probably should make at this stage. So in addition to determining a time frame, discuss what will happen if you don't reach your target sample in time and what has priority. So how important is a large or representative sample to you and to your team? Or can you also answer your questions with a smaller, perhaps less representative sample? Also discuss with your supervisors how much time you are going to spend on data collection activities and what are mutual expectations regarding the feasibility of your data collection project. Let me give you an example from my own project. For our Where Do I Belong study, we were looking for 250 divorced families. This was our target sample and at the same time the minimum number of families that we wanted to include, or at least that is what we had in mind initially. If you've watched the previous knowledge clip, you'll remember that we had a variety of recruitment activities, ranging from contacting schools to recruitment to our bachelor students. We did not have a chronological plan, partly because we expected that the recruitment through schools would yield quite a lot of participants, and because our societal partners were very optimistic as well. Unfortunately, many of our activities did not have the results we had hoped for, and so we did as much as we could at that time and just tried to look for other opportunities as we went along. So the initial time frame for our data collection for wave 1 was 9 months, and we didn't discuss beforehand what we would do if we would not reach this target sample and when we would stop. At that time, we were just too optimistic and honestly hoped that we wouldn't have to think about that. Eventually, we stopped after 18 months, when we had finally managed to include only 150 families. As you can imagine, this is quite a difficult and stressful time for us. Another example is from the In Transition project. Their research population consisted of students that were about to make a school transition. They were looking for 1,200 students. Their strategy was to find as much schools as possible so that they could inform parents and students at those schools. As they wanted to study school transitions, they had to start with their recruitment activities during the summer, and they hoped that data collection could take place within the first 3 months of the school year, so from September to December. As with our project, they as well hoped that they would manage to reach their target sample in time. But when that didn't happen, they decided that a bigger sample was more important than sticking to their plan in terms of timing, and so their data collection went on until February. I can imagine that these two examples do not paint a pretty picture of what your strategy and data collection could look like, but still this is what can happen, and part of the reasons why we wanted to organize this course on data collection in the first place, so that you can learn from our mistakes. But let's not dwell on this too much and discuss more helpful strategies, such as registration and evaluation of your data collection activities. I don't expect that this is new information to you, but it is very important to include this in your data collection strategy as well. First of all, for data collection purposes, make sure to reflect regularly on what worked and what did not. Try to create a system to write this down for yourself, like a log. I can say from my own experiences that there were so many things that happened during my data collection that I thought I would never forget, and as a result didn't write down. But you're probably not going to remember every single thing. And although that's okay too, it can give you a bit of peace of mind if you do write it down somewhere. Discuss your notes every once in a while with your team. Personally, I think it's best to do this weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on the duration of your data collection project. This way, you can intervene if necessary and adjust your recruitment strategy accordingly. This kind of transparency also helps you ensure that you and your supervisors are on the same page. And at the same time, it can prevent potential feelings of self-blame if things don't work out. Sometimes things just don't work out as expected, and it's best to discuss these type of situations as soon as possible. Furthermore, precise registration of your data collection activities also contributes to the transferability of your work. For example, in case you get assistance or want or need to be absent for a while. Second, registration and evaluation of your efforts can also be very useful for future reference. Registration of data collection activities and evaluation will make it easier to write study protocols, pre-registrations, and method sections. It could also be useful for future data collection projects. Here are two examples of how we used Excel to keep track of our recruitment activities. This picture on the left is from my project, and the letters A to M were different types of activities, which corresponded to different sheets where I took note of our efforts. The In Transition project also used Excel and created an overview of all the schools they approached. So contact information, information about the number of students in each school, and they also kept a log with who contacted who when. They used the color scheme to keep track of which schools were interested, green, which schools weren't interested, red, or weren't sure yet, in yellow. Then, last but not least, some insights into our previous mistakes and how to use them to your advantage. So, a wait and see attitude. Don't wait to see what happens before you react. Take control and make sure to be on top of all things data collection. The second pitfall is being too optimistic and therefore doing too little. Like I said earlier, more is more when it comes to data collection activities. Create your own momentum. Another pitfall can be giving up too soon. Be persistent and try again. What many of us experience, I think, is wanting to do everything ourselves. But you can't. Ask for help, not just from your supervisors or other colleagues, but also spread the word. And finally, a fear of being stalkerish. For example, when approaching participants or when sending them reminders through emails, texts, or calls. As long as you're friendly, open, and honest, people can handle a lot more than you think.